those who are just joining us, welcome to our 6th webinar here at Talent Hive. Welcome to those who haven't joined us already, but those who have joined us on previous webinars, I think you'll kind of know the format. So what we'll do is we'll just wait a couple more minutes for everyone to join us, and then we'll kick things off about 1:05, if that's okay. Lovely. So I can't chat about the weather. It's pretty mixed here in Birmingham today, but no. Right there, Aid, you cold?
Excited, Will.
Sorry, excited?
Excited.
Whereabouts are you based, Susan?
I live in Milton Keynes.
Ah, okay. Good.
We were party to an earthquake yesterday, apparently.
Were you?
Yeah, apparently the epicentre was Leighton Buzzard, and it was felt across Milton Keynes, Luton, so sort of an M1 corridor. So I didn't feel anything. The earth did not move for me yesterday at 9:45.
No, I saw some postings on social media about that. I didn't know whether it was a joke or whether it had actually happened.
No, apparently it was real.
Gosh, buzzard on a fault line. Who knew?
Milton Keynes. Yeah,
there it is.
The epicentre of Milton Keynes. Yeah.
What about you, Hilary? Whereabouts are you based?
I'm Ealing, West London.
Oh, okay, lovely.
It's funny how the whole country is sort of so different. You know, London is just so different from now in terms of its recovery from, well, in hospitality and hotels.
Yeah, it's
a very different picture for in London than it is elsewhere.
Even like from
really...
from central to the suburbs is completely different though, isn't it? A friend of mine lives out in Clapham, and he says it's busy, the ghost city, and it's nothing happening. But slowly, I read an article yesterday, I think kind of footfall, traffic and trains going into city centres, I think they use London and Birmingham, we're up, I think 15% week on week, which is good to see.
I've been stuck in traffic the last 2 days.
Yeah.
Have you? Where are you based?
So I live in a place called Tamworth, so about 30 minutes from Birmingham.
Okay.
But yeah, it's the first time since I've been back since July, last 2 days. So yeah, and I think it just coincides with the schools going back. I think people are going to be getting back to work now. It's never thought I'd be happy to say I'm stuck in traffic, but there we go.
No, it's good. It's good to see a bit of traffic. It was weird coming into I came into the office a few times during proper lockdown. It was weird, very strange. Strange feeling. Seems a distant memory now. It really does. So it's been, I think July, August and September have been, well, start of this month have been pretty slow months really. You think it's going to come back a bit quicker than it is, but I think something's better than nothing at the moment. So
we'll get there.
We will. We'll get there. We're optimists. We're resilient.
We will.
Right, let me just check. Our 6th webinar, and I've still not really worked out the technology of these things.
Say this every week.
I know. Well, the first week was pretty scary, but I'm getting used to it. But I was just trying to find the... here we go. See who's joined us. Lovely. We're on 1:05. Yeah, we're pretty much there. So cool, lovely. I'll click to the agenda. Brilliant, lovely. Cool, 1:05. So big welcome to everyone who's joined our webinar today. Appreciate you spending the time listening to us chat all things interviews really. So today we're going to discuss 2nd and 3rd interviews. So last week and probably the week before actually, we discussed how to kind of prepare for your first interview, first impressions, etc. So now we're going to, I think hot topics today is really kind of building from your first interview. using your first interview as a mechanism to perform better in your second interview, and probably just talk about the types of interviews you'll expect, because having kind of recruited now, I think I'm coming to 14, 15 years now, interviews have changed completely, and everyone's getting quite a bit more creative, I guess, in terms of the style of interviews they're doing and the format. So we're going to run through a few common ones we come across, and hopefully kind of demonstrate what good looks like in those types of interviews. So if you haven't joined us before, our webinars are very just conversational. Unfortunately, it's just ourselves and the guests who'll be chatting today, but we do have a Q&A function. And not to interrupt the flow of the webinar, we'll come to the question answers towards the end. We will record all the webinars as well, which go onto our websites a few hours after the webinar. So if you have to dash off, take a call, or you find it that useful and informative, then you can obviously forward and share with any of your network. Lovely. So I will kick things off to ask the guests to introduce themselves, because it's always better coming from them than myself. Who'd like to kick us off?
Want me to go? I don't mind then, I'll start. I'm Hilary Cooke from my own consultancy company called Merlin Consultancy. I'm a bit of a fraud on this talk because I haven't had a proper job for about 30 years. But my background's hospitality and all my clients are in hospitality. So from a hospitality point of view, I don't actually recruit myself. I'm not a recruiter, but I do get involved in recruitment, restructuring, and the industry in general. So yeah, I'm not a specific expert, but hospitality is my love.
Absolutely. I think you'll add more value than you think today, Hilary, with your views. And I think when you work with clients, I think we spoke about this in a call yesterday, then, you know, clients are always leaning on us for advice on how to interview certain roles, different processes, etc. So I'm sure you've been involved. So I'm looking forward to your input. And Susan, if you could tell us a bit more about yourself.
Yeah, I've been in hospitality for 20 plus years. Started out as a manager and then moved into the people team. So have been responsible for recruitment, training in a number of large companies, Wetherspoons, Stonegate, and more recently as head of people with Breakspear. A little bit like Hilary, feel a little bit of a fraud at the minute because I'm also on the other side of things. I don't currently have a job, so I am currently in the market for a new position as well, but have been responsible for recruiting in hospitality for quite some time.
I mean, typically with your last role and previous roles, I mean, how many hires were you involved in kind of on a monthly or annual basis?
Oh, wow. It'd be difficult to actually say, to be fairly honest, but I have probably touched the lives, whether it be through offering positions, interviewing, giving feedback and training and development, probably in the region of, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 maybe people, to be fair. So quite a lot over the course of the last few years.
So I think you might add value rather than a fraud.
Here's hoping so.
I think it's really interesting that you're not working too, and I haven't got as much work as I'd like. Because sometimes when you do these things, I think it's easy for everyone else to sit and watch people like us and think, oh, it's all right for you, and not realise that we are also in the same position as many of the people that are watching us. I think that's really levelling.
Yeah, I think all four of us, our lives are a little bit different compared to early March, really, aren't they? So yeah, I think we could all, and I think it's, yeah, Hilary, you've had your own consultancy for 30 odd years, so probably not, but I think we could all relate to job searches and being on the other side as well. So yeah, some useful advice from both sides. What about you, Aid? What's your background? I do this every week, don't I?
People are getting sick of hearing it. Sick of hearing it. So I'm Adrian, for those of you that are new to the call. So I've been working at Talent Hive now for 5 years. We're coming up to 6 by the time we finish these webinars. Yeah, so I've been here 5 years, and prior to that, I spent 15 years working in hotels. At the Belfry, everyone knows my career now on this. So I started off at the Belfry in the Midlands to Golf Resort, and then moved to a company called Q Hotels. I spent 10 years working for them. Front of house roles, operational roles, up to operations manager. So I did about 5 years as an ops manager. So again, plenty of recruiting from a client side as well as an agency side. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Aid. So yeah, discussions points today. I think the one I really wanted to kick off on, actually, we was discussing this in the office earlier, which is something we always do as recruiters, but I think a lot of people who are going to rewatch these webinars or are currently on it will be applying for jobs directly. Our webinars are all about you need to go via a recruitment agency like ourselves or one of our competitors. So I think it's really important. I think when we get, how can I phrase this? So when we progress a candidate from first stage to second stage, if it's via ourselves, we'll always grab feedback from the clients and guide the candidate through the second and third stage, using the pros and cons from the first stage. Because believe it or not, it's very rare someone completely aces the first stage interview. There's always a kind of a question mark over a certain skill or background or fit. Would they be right in a certain area? So as recruiters, what we'll do is we'll guide candidates through it and say, they weren't quite sure if you demonstrated enough on this certain subject. It could be finance, it could be people management, it could be, you know, customer service. But I think as a lot of candidates who are going to be watching this will be applying for jobs directly, won't have that coaching element of a recruitment agency to help you on that and be quite honest with you in terms of what you did well on and what you didn't, but you're still going through to the second, third stage. So I think it's really important to ask for feedback from your first interview, even if they just say you're through to the second stage, and find out what you didn't quite perform in, and make sure on the second, third stage you can demonstrate and reassure the employer that you're good in those areas. If you are, or you might actually recognise with them it's a development area they could support you on. What's your thoughts on this, guys? Is this something, this is probably towards Susan really, in terms of, have you, when you're directly recruiting and maybe in your last role with Breakspear, would you do that with candidates, or would you encourage hiring managers to do that with candidates to help them to kind of perform better in the second and third stage?
I think it's always important to be able to give that feedback, and it might not always be what the person necessarily wants to hear, but it's definitely about delivering it in a positive way. It's important that it's constructive and that it's about, you know, this is what I saw, or this is where I feel that you didn't quite come across strongly enough, and giving examples of what it is that you heard or how they answered questions, or, you know, I felt that I didn't see the real you because you seemed extremely nervous and you just need to relax a little bit. And I think that's really the important thing. You know, for as difficult as it is going for an interview, and believe me, I do know about that now, having gone through a number of interviews of late and having done, you know, video interviews, it really can be taking you out of your comfort zone. But the important thing is to prepare as much as you can and to be as ready for it as you can, so that you do put your best show forward, really, I think, and then not to be frightened asking for that feedback, and then taking it on the chin, really, and going back to the drawing board again and thinking, okay, I know that I've got those skills, I didn't demonstrate them, how can I actually answer that next time, or how can I demonstrate that?
No, it's good, and it's good that you, as a recruitment manager, HR, would kind of welcome that and spend time with candidates, because you want them, if you like a candidate and you progress them to the next stage, you want them to perform, don't you? It's kind of your reputation at risk a little bit, isn't it? If you suggest a candidate to a hiring manager, be it a regional manager or a GM, then you want them to see what you saw, I guess.
Yeah. But absolutely, it's also equally important to be honest with the person if they're not the right fit as well. And and equally being able to say to them, you know, if you've taken the time to do a face-to-face interview, or, you know, even if it is over video, that actually giving that honest feedback as to why they haven't been successful at that point as well, so that they can work on that, whether it's not the right company fit, whether not right in their career stage, whether their skills don't match, what they need to work on to be able to move forward, or, you know, giving advice on as to what companies maybe they should be going out to look for, to be able to work within, that can probably help them with those skills as well.
No, exactly. And what about Adrian, Hilary? Have you got any thoughts on this?
I do. And just as we were talking, some thoughts were going through my mind. I think if you ask for feedback, which is a great thing to do, you're kind of leaving it very general, and you're leaving it to someone else to do the work for you. And I know when I get asked for feedback, sometimes I go, not quite sure what to say. So I think if you can be more specific about the feedback that you want, give me some feedback on my fit for the organisation. Give me some feedback on the first impressions. Give me some feedback on the skills, and try and kind of narrow down so that you're getting specifics. Because if you just leave it general, you'll probably get feedback back that may not be helpful. It may not be what you wanted. And I think without being specific, you're trying to match two things up. The more specific you can be on the type of feedback that you want, the easier you're making it for the recruiter, because then they've just got to answer specific questions. You're actually getting something back that you can do something with.
No, I like that.
If you ask for feedback and they say, "Oh, I liked your jumper," like, what are you supposed to do with that? And but it's feedback, right? It's so you got what you deserve.
I mean, when we represent candidates, sometimes we get quite loose feedback, as in, you know, if it was a negative feedback, you weren't the right fit, or so really broad. And it's no good.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay. What do you do with it? So be specific. Don't be frightened of getting feedback. Just be specific.
Yeah. And have your clients been honest, Aid? Would they welcome giving feedback for your candidates, successful or not, after the first stage?
Yeah, and I think if we're talking about somebody that's going directly with a company, by asking for that, if you've been invited to second stage, it's a good idea to touch base with the hiring manager. There's different types of second interviews. It may be with the same person, or it may be with a different person altogether. It might be with the hiring manager's boss, for example. And you could be their preferred candidate. You might be, their favourite candidate, and they're going to want you to do well if it's an interview with somebody else. So actually, by reaching out and asking for feedback, they're going to steer you in the right direction of what that person's going to want to hear at the second stage interview. It's very rare you're going to see the same person twice alone for an interview process. Normally, it's going to be a second person involved. And if they want, if they feel that you are suitable, they're going to want you to perform well. And we get it from clients. They'll interview 5 people, take 3 through to second stage. They really like your candidate, and they'll tell us what the next interviewer is going to want to hear from that person. We can feed that back. So go and ask yourself, if you go in direct companies, go and ask that person, what is it? And it is almost asking what that feedback is, but ask the question, what is it that this person is going to expect to hear from me? And they're more than likely going to share it with you, because also if they're putting you through to the second interview, that's telling their line manager or whoever's doing it that they feel you're suitable for the position. So they're not going to want to look bad either. They will help you going through to that second stage interview for sure. Yeah.
It's not just what they want to hear. It's like, what do you need to demonstrate to this individual? What do they like? What kind of characteristics or skill sets, hard or soft skills, are they looking for? And it's not kind of just saying words that they want to hear. It's actually experience and kind of achievements you've already done, but you just got to make sure you're highlighting it. It's like putting a highlighter pen across your CV and making sure they see all the bits that are relevant to the role you're applying for.
I think that recruiter, when I was in recruitment doing it, we had a list of criteria that we were looking for. So even the feedback, instead of asking feedback, it's like, how did I measure up against some of the criteria? They might not tell you all of it, but even if you get a couple of nuggets, then it's a sensible question to ask rather than just generally asking for feedback. Or even asking what are some of the criteria that we're looking for this role. They might say, I can't tell you, I'll have to kill you, but I doubt they'll give you something.
No, it is. It's even going back to when we represent CVs, we look at job description, getting a person spec, etc., making sure we're hitting the majority of the criteria and just highlighting that to the client, why we think this candidate's suitable for this role. I've always said recruitment is a rocket science. Otherwise I wouldn't be in it. But yeah, it's just making sure the recruiter or the hiring manager actually knows, well, they can see that you've got what they're looking for. So, okie dokie. And I guess what kind of interviews would you expect now from a second or third stage? Because as Adrian just touched on a second ago, it's very rare these days you just see the same person again. I mean, I think that's how it used to be. You just have someone else's opinion on you as a candidate. What kind of other second, third stage interviews have you seen out there at the moment?
If I'll take this one. What I've previously done is initially I will do the initial first stage interview, and that's around company fit and explaining who we are as a company, understanding the skill set of the person, what it is that they're looking for, where they are in their stage within their career, and whether we as a company have got anything that's suitable for them, for what they're looking for. Moving through there then, the second stage, generally, it would either be a psychometric testing, but equally, that's a kind of a second stage, second and a half, if you like. Because to go through to second stage would be then to generally, if it's the general manager or it would be or a member of management, it would be to meet with the line manager, so either the area manager or the general manager at the site, and that would then mean looking at turning up with some form of business plan, whether it be a SWOT analysis, and the expectation that the person would have been to. So if we're talking general manager here, we would have expected that the general manager would have gone to look at the site that they are then specifically interviewing for, that they would have visited the site on a number of different occasions to be able to talk openly and honestly about what they saw, how they created their SWOT analysis, so the strengths of the site, the weaknesses, what opportunities there are there that they would then look to explore if they're successful in the role, and what threats there are within the area that might mean that the business, that would affect the business potentially. And what I would always encourage the person to do then is complete the SWOT analysis and then turn up with bullet points around a 30, 60, 90-day plan. This is what I would be doing, having done the SWOT analysis, if successful in being the general manager of that site. In the first 30 days, this is my action plan. This is what I would expect that I would do. This is the outcome I would expect to have as a result of doing this. So 30 days, 60 days and 90 days. And again, it doesn't have to be war and peace. It can be 2 sheets of paper, one being the SWOT, one being the 30, 60, 90-day plan. It's about bullet pointing. And then you turn up to the interview, the second stage interview, with the area manager, the BDM, and you're able to then have that as your framework and then have your discussion around that. So, you know, that's some of the things that I've certainly used and done previously.
Would you welcome that if a candidate hasn't been asked to do it? Would that look like you've gone above and beyond the expected, or would that? I
think from my perspective, once I know that I'm putting somebody through to next stage, that is what I would expect of them, to turn up at next stage, knowing the business, that certainly, you know, if it's, and I'm talking general manager level here, so they need to know the business that we're then specifically interviewing them for. And we need to know that they've got a good handle of that business, what the challenges are going to be going in there, what what level of sales we're looking to achieve from that site, and where and how they're going to go about moving into that site to actually make the site successful, to take over from the incumbent general manager, to then build that business and make it successful. I think if we're talking at team member level, it would be the initial interview would be a telephone screen, and then the next stage would be we'd be looking at a trial shift. So again, turning up to a trial shift, ready for work, present in your position, wanting to meet with the team, engaging with the team, engaging with the customers and the guests, and showing that you can work off your own initiative, that you're not just going to stand around and watch, that you're going to be involved as much as you obviously can. There's no expectation that you would start taking orders or keying things into the till or jumping behind the bar and start serving as such, but showing that initiative, with the person that you've been buddied up with to go through your trial shift with.
What's the top 3 tips for a good trial shift? What would impress?
I would say make sure that you're early. So be early, be prepared, and be present. So, turn up ready to listen to what is going to happen during the trial shift. Engage with the team so that because you're going to be working potentially within that team, so you need to know that it's the right fit for you, as well as you're the right fit. It's a dual experience here. It's not just about, well, I want to impress the people who are interviewing me. It really is also about making sure that the people that you're going to be working with, that you're going to enjoy working with them as well. So, it's equally you sussing out the company as, going in there into the trial shift, but, understanding the level of work that's expected. Really, what are the busiest shifts? What do they look like? How does the team work? How is everything split down across the different roles? Who does what? How does the whole jigsaw piece together? So understanding that really as well, so that you don't turn up then and start working, and then you get to a busy Friday or Saturday night shift and you suddenly go into panic mode because it's really not what you were expecting.
No, absolutely. And I think enthusiasm kind of goes a long way at that kind of level, when you kind of, trial shifts are aimed towards kind of more junior up to supervisory level. And a smile and enthusiasm will get you a long way as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And what's everyone's thoughts on presentations? So if we're looking at more kind of senior level candidates, because every time, I guess if I've got a candidate who isn't most comfortable in presentations or hasn't done one for quite a while, when you tell them on the phone that the next stage of the presentation, you can hear quite a long pause and silence until they can collect their thoughts. What's everyone's experience with presentations? Have many people done them in terms of job applications or host them as hiring managers?
I haven't done one for a job application, but it's quite frequent to be asked one as a consultant to do a great presentation. So yeah, I mean, I do it for a living and I still go, oh, because you're being judged, isn't it? You know that. I think both for the second interview and for presentations, I'd say do your homework, whatever your level. If you're going for a job as a waiter or a waitress, then look at the menu online. So at least you know what the food style is. If you're going to do a presentation, then find something that's going to be interesting. Look at their TripAdvisor, if you've got TripAdvisor data, and see what kind of problems are recurring, and maybe build a presentation around that is going to be of interest and of help, and to show that you've done your homework. There's so much now that never, when I started my career, we didn't have all the stuff like internet and things to look at. You had to go and physically pick up a menu, and you had to go and physically look around and sort of be in the property. But do your homework, pick up menus, look at drinks lists, look at what trends are happening around. If you're going for a presentation or an interview in a particular style of restaurant and look at what the trends are for those kind of restaurants, so that you can be interesting and interested in the situation that you're in, and you're bound to it, because all the employers are looking for is someone that gives a damn about the business.
Yeah.
It's really not that complicated. It is a science. It is a science. You need to have some evidence. You can't just sort of go in all woolly and not having prepared, because someone else will beat you to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we touched on one of the previous webinars when an employer kind of says, you know, what do you know about us already? Try not to regurgitate the website to them. Go beyond that. Look at, you know, news articles, or, as you say, review websites such as TripAdvisor. Really kind of dig deep. Don't just regurgitate their website to them. And maybe if you have kind of digested their website, think about questions around it. I think an example I used the other week was maybe if they'd just recently done a charity event, you know, done Kilimanjaro or something, ask them about it. So you're kind of telling them, I've read your website, but it's not telling him, I know how many members of staff you've got, and you've got sites in Guildford and whatever. So yeah, I think it's thinking about then is a really kind of digging deep, I think, and kind of demonstrating that knowledge. Definitely. All right, presentations for you, Aid.
I would say, just echo what the ladies have said in terms of do your homework. I think when it comes to putting together a presentation, if it's not something you're used to, don't, and it's, you mentioned about regurgitating websites, don't just put loads of words on the slide and read them. That's not what people want in an interview. You bullet point it, you then have a discussion, a bit like Susan said about taking a SWOT analysis and stuff like that. It's a presentation is a discussion point. It's not there just for them to read, and that's the interview. It's, it's very much, it's got to be slick and punchy, and you discuss around that. I think it depends on the roles. If it's a salesy role, they're going to want to see stats, numbers, graphs, and all that kind of stuff. And if it's a more operational, then you absolutely look at your customer service scores, TripAdvisors, make it relevant to what you're recruiting for. I think as well, just quickly on that, which you mentioned, I've recently had a candidate who's been looking at a role in a different city, and it's within a sales environment. And to prepare for her second interview, she reached out to somebody within the company, didn't know them, reached out to that person to get a little bit of insight on the company. So she found it out, like Hilary says, the internet's there to use. LinkedIn, you can find out who's working for the companies. She also got in touch with all of the sales managers within that city and had arranged to sort of have conversations and meetings with them. So when she went to the interview, she could demonstrate, because she knew it was going to happen, because before we got to the second stage, we knew that they wanted to know about, they need to have some knowledge of the city. So that person did all she could to demonstrate what she would do in that situation, which...
Go above the expected, I think.
Yeah, that's what you want to do in the job, isn't it? If you can't go beyond the expected to a presentation, then why would you do it when I employ you? So if it's not the way you mean to go on,
No, it's basics, isn't it? Surprise them. I don't think you can do too much, to be honest. And yeah, Aid touched on LinkedIn there, networking within that business, finding out a bit more, asking them questions. Imagine if you're speaking to, I don't know, whoever's interviewing their colleague, and they go, oh, I've had a candidate asking me about our business. They'd be like, wow, they're really going, they're going full level for this job. They really want it. It's just demonstrating you really want this job, because everyone could say, I really want this job in interview, but how many people believe it?
The actual power of having somebody in the company go to the person that is interviewing you and say, they came into my business, I met with them, we had a great chat, this is what we talked about. I think they'll really be an asset to the business. It's really, really powerful to have that.
Yeah.
Very powerful indeed.
Yeah.
There's something sometimes that's counterproductive about saying I really want this job, because it's like admitting that we're vulnerable. If you really want the job, go for it. Let it be known that you really want that job. Don't be frightened to really want it, because you want someone in your team who really wants to be there.
As an employer, it's a dream, isn't it? To have an employee who's driven, wants to succeed, wants to progress within your business. It's amazing. It's good. And you want to keep them, you want to employ them to start with, but you want to kind of nurture them and develop them. So no, it's good. I think there's ways of demonstrating it. So we've kind of touched on, I think Susan's just mentioned it as well, really, actually, in terms of SWOT analysis, etc. But we're getting a lot of clients now, usually for kind of unit level, kind of restaurant, pubs, etc., GM roles, where they'll go and do a site visit, not necessarily at the site they're looking to work within, but they're asked to do another site visit. What's your thoughts on getting candidates to do mystery guest visits, and how honest can they be in their feedback to you? Can they go kind of full gun and just kind of tell you exactly how it is, or how would a candidate be best to kind of feedback on one of your sites?
A funny one that, and I was thinking of my old days as HR in hotels, and if we interviewed housekeepers, we used to leave them sitting on reception for 10 or 15 minutes, and then one of the questions we'd ask them was, did you notice anything? And if they said, no, it's really lovely, they weren't for us. If they said, I hope you don't mind me mentioning, but your brass could do with a bit of polish, you're in.
Yeah.
So it's a tough one. So you don't want to give the recruiter or the employer something that they don't want to hear, but you need to find something. And I would make it an experience rather than a criticism. So I noticed this, or this happened to me, or I wondered if. So you sort of can feed it back, but moderate your language. Not saying, well, I thought this was disgusting. That's not going to get you anywhere. But noticing stuff, because that's what you're doing it for, but just being very kind of curious about what you notice. And I wonder if that's normal, and I wonder if that normally goes on. You can be quite canny about the way you do that. Yeah,
so you can be honest, but it's the way you kind of, how you present it to them, I guess.
It's my consultant's head on, sorry. You give the client they do want to hear. You need to be careful how you do it.
No, you do, absolutely. Okay. I think you don't upset someone, especially if it's a small business owner with 6 restaurants, and you tell them, how awful their sites is. But yeah, I think they value. I think they know not every restaurant's going to be 100%, or venue or whatever you're recruiting for is going to be 100%.
I think if you like you say, it's a constructive conversation about it. If we talk on pubs and you've gone for an experience there, and it says what way, you can say maybe they were over busy, maybe it's a training need. You can sort of touch on how you would address it if it is actually a problem there, until you actually got into the operation and really saw it in a longer period of time. But you demonstrate from the negative points what you could do to improve, rather than just go in, steak was terrible, sack the chef.
Well, those managers are sitting there interviewing you, thinking, don't give me a problem, come to me with a solution. And that's exactly what you do.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you're going to criticise, come up with a solution.
They want that.
What about... Yeah.
Hiring managers want you to come. If they've invited you for a mystery guest, they're going to want to see that you've saw negative things and how you're going to address it. I think that's just what they expect, to be honest.
I mean, 9 times out of 10, they know that operation they ask you to go and visit isn't probably where it should be anyway. So they probably want that feedback. And actually, they probably value it, because when they walk on site, they see something different because the staff know who they are.
I think it's equally important to be able to give the good, what you saw that was good as well. So, to start off the conversation with, this is what I thought was great. I really appreciated seeing this, and this. However, this is what I think could do with some work. This is what I experienced. This is what I witnessed. This is what I saw. And this is how I would address it. This is what I would put in place to stop that happening.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe sandwich it with good stuff before the bad stuff.
Yeah.
No, I like that. Absolutely. And I think, Susan, you touched on earlier, and again, it's I think in the last few years, we're seeing more and more of it, because it's been, I guess it's more varied. I mean, I've seen it for the last 10 years in recruitment, but it's becoming more and more common, is psychometrics tests. And again, just like presentations, you kind of tell a candidate they want to do psychometric tests. Everyone thinks they want to kind of cut their head open and kind of examine their brain, but it's really not as bad as that. Most of them are more about kind of culture fit and profiling than actual kind of numbers and, numericals. I mean, what's your experience with psychometrics? You ran them at Breakspear. Have you dealt with them, Hilary?
I have, yeah. I'll let Sue answer first operationally, and then I'll tell you. I'll add a bit more, I think. So.
Okay, perfect. I've used 2 different types. I have used the mental agility, where it is about kind of piecing together correct words and you know, doing maths and what have you. And my advice always is, with those particular ones, you need to make sure that you've done a practice first. Don't go in blind and expect to be able to do it straight away. Make sure that you take the time. Don't think that you can sit down at the end of a busy shift in the office and cash up at the same time as doing it. You know, you need to be in the right frame of mind. You need to be refreshed and you need to be focused to do it. Make sure you've got everything around you. If it's going to be maths and you're going to need a calculator, make sure that you've got one, because certainly the mental agility ones are timed, and it's about making sure that you can think quickly, process the information and give an answer. So equally, don't labour too long on trying to get to the right answer. If you really don't think you can get there, then give an answer and move on so that you can get through the majority of the actual test. When it comes to the style that are more personality profiling, the company will have already decided what good looks like. So they will have a model that is what they perceive to be the correct fit. And so it's a measure as to how you measure up against that fit. So it's important that with that type of, when it's personality, go with your gut, go with the answer that is correct for you, not what you think they want to hear. But again, make sure that you're in a quiet place, that you're able to give it the full amount of time, that you're able to start it and complete it all in one go. Don't try and go back to it afterwards. I think they're really the important things around it. And generally, no company will 100% just use what is the information that is given on that to take a decision. It's part of a bigger process. And quite often, if the company is lucky to get to a point where they've got 2 or 3 candidates and they really can't decide between them, then it probably goes down to the profiling in that particular stage. So, you know, stay calm, be realistic, and be yourself, and go with gut in that respect. That's what I'd say with psychometric testing.
Some good advice there. Some of the stuff I'll tell candidates before. Time, make sure you've got space and time to do it. No interruptions, because usually once they start, they don't stop. Think about when you're most alert, I suppose, and don't do it after a long shift. Even if you have to delay it for a couple of days and tell the hiring manager it's going to be a few days, make sure you get it right. And it is only one tool of a decision-making process for most of my clients. It's not the be-all and end-all, but they do use it. And I think it's the colours one, isn't it? They'll already know what profile they're looking for. I've got a feeling Hilary is going to be an expert in this field.
I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert at all. But I kind of, I know a bit about psychometrics. First thing I'd say is that if you do a psychometric test, the data belongs to you. So you should get some feedback. Okay. And find out what's going to happen to the data. Who's going to see it? It's a bit difficult to do when you're going for a job for yourself, which is kind of why it's useful to have a recruitment agency to be working as an agent for you. I think the agency can answer these questions, whereas it's difficult to do if you're independent. So there's a nice plug for using somebody to help you get a job. I think that there are different types of psychometrics. So I think to find out what it is that you're going to be asked to be doing, and maybe do some homework on what it is. If it's an agility and a knowledge, or there's tests that you can do to test your level of risk taking or your accuracy, those are great. Just do them, because that's a good thing to know what your scores are on that kind of thing. The colours ones, I pulled a face, and I know I pulled a face, and I didn't mean to be so obvious. They tend to be Jungian based, so based on Jung's psychology. And Jung was very good at classifying. That was the model. So I just have a bit of a thing about being too classified as a human being. I think and I also think sometimes that can mask some behaviour, you know, with the red, you know, I can't help shouting at people because I'm just so red me, and it just excuses a whole lot of bad behaviour. I think you're very careful how they're used. So I'd like to know, I mean, just as from curiosity, and I'm not in a position where I'm asking an interviewer when I'm going for a job, so it's probably not relevant to know, but I would like to know what I'm doing, what I'm being asked to do, why I'm being asked to do it, and what it is that I need to do, and what good looks like. And I think those are, and I think don't be too nervous about them, because you're not going to be judged just on one psychometric.
No.
It's a minor part of the decision making.
Yeah. No, it's just a tool they use, and sometimes they'll do it quite early on in the process, and then they'll bring out the results towards the end and use it in their questioning.
Yes.
Usually in the final stage is a tool. So if it throws up something unusual, they'll probably question around that without you knowing. So actually to request, a copy of the results is probably most going to benefit you. Absolutely.
Useful to know.
Yeah, but they're not scary. It's just an online.
I'd say just one thing to add is that if you've never done them before, there are example tests out there on the internet. So if you've never done one before, then just Google it. You know, the company, you should get a link. When you get the link, it'll tell you the company, maybe Quintax or Thomas International. There's lots out there, but you should be able to find a test that you can do, an example test. So you kind of get a feel for what it's going to be like before you actually do the test. So.
Just the layout and format. So when you never navigate yourself around it, it's a bit like jumping on using Facebook for the first time or something. It's it's unusual, but if you've gone around it a few times, it's pretty easy to use. So it might just speed up your kind of ability to fill them in. And as we mentioned, they are timed. So
you're also getting data about yourself, which might be useful in another situation. So you might do a test, or do a test online. Go and do a test on leadership styles, for example. The Goldman one is really good. Just free test, do it. And then you've got something to talk about to interview and say, oh, I realised when I did this test that I've got this strength, but I'm going to be working on this next. It makes for an interesting conversation. So don't be frightened of them. They're tools that give you evidence about your position, your where you are now.
Brilliant.
I've noticed recently on Caterer that there is an opportunity on there now to be able to do a test to see what sort of a fit you are for the company, and that then develops further. You can sign up for it and do a number of different tests. So it looks like certainly Caterer are moving towards supporting in that way as well.
I think people believe in it a bit more than they used to. I think there is, but I think it's subjective. Some people value it more than others, but Caterer have definitely got it, because on our side of Caterer we get an option to use it as recruiters. So there's certain profiles or backgrounds we're looking for, we can search accordingly. But it's probably still not the be all and end all. We might miss good candidates, as Hilary
absolutely.
Because of it. So, but they do exist in quite a lot of kind of mid to senior level roles now, so they're absolutely fine. Brilliant. I think we've covered some really good stuff there. I think I've covered every format of interview I want to speak to: presentations, business plans. Assessment days, yes, which is probably more in my sector, isn't it, Aid, than everyone else's. So I recruit a lot in contract catering. So we'll have, if we're recruiting several roles, our clients will host an assessment day, which usually for kind of mid to senior roles, where there might be 3 or 4 individuals within that business, and there might be a presentation element, there might be a finance element, working yourself around a P&L account and then presenting back. There might be a food piece sometimes in these assessment days. So the director of food or the head of F&B within that business will chat food with you. And it's actually really, for me, as we touched on it earlier, interviews are a two-way street. For me, these assessment days, they've come back into vogue. So a lot of my clients the last couple of years have gone back to them. I think it was a very 90s thing, assessment days, and they seem to be back in trend. So I think they're really good, actually. We've done a few for us, haven't we, Aid, where people get to meet all the key people in the business and do lots of activities. It's usually kind of a 2 or 3 hour session. And you get to meet other applicants for not necessarily the role you're applying for, but other roles in the business. And you get to meet all the key stakeholders within that business, which is good. So you can really work out if this business is for you. Because people work for people, they don't necessarily work for a business. So I think if you meet all the key individuals in that business, you can, if and when you get a job offer, you've probably got more of a good feel of what they're like as a business. So yeah, assessment days are coming back into fashion. And again, there is usually a presentation element in there, but there's nothing too scary on that. But if you are going for a recruiter, any good recruiter will know exactly what that assessment day looks like for that business, because they would have worked with that client for hopefully numerous years. So they'll be able to tell you what to expect. So when you walk through the door, it's not an unknown. You've got an idea, a layout of what the day will look like, or the half day will look like. So cool, excellent. Trial shifts, yeah, I think we've covered all elements on that. So if I move swiftly to Aid, I think you're going to give us, is it a positive update on the job market today?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think so. I think so. I mean, listen, it's still, you know, we're not out of the woods, and there's, you know, it's getting better. And I think even when I say, I think at the start of the webinar, I said, God, I got stuck in traffic on the way to work all this week. The schools are back now. It seems as though people are going back to work. And even, you know, outside of the hospitality industry, it's still going to have a direct impact on the hospitality industry, because when people are going back to work, footfalls are coming back into the cities and towns, people are booking meetings, you know, it's moving, it is definitely moving in the right direction. And 2 months ago, I didn't, you know, I hardly saw any cars on the way to Birmingham, and now I'm back to my old, not my old commute, but getting closer to it. You know, there's a lot of traffic on the roads. We've picked up 8 new roles already this week, which is, well, we've been back. You've been working since March, Will, but since kind of the end of June when we've been back, we were getting nowhere near that level of roles. So that's a positive. There's more out there. You know, I say again, we're speaking to more candidates. They're interviewing for roles. So it is coming back. Obviously, last night's announcement wasn't great, but they're keeping meetings. You know, they're allowing the restaurant to buy, and I don't think we're going to see them close. Don't quote me on that, but
hold you to it, Aid. He said it. It's recorded, isn't it? Yeah. Cool.
We discussed before we came on, before we went live. We don't think they're going to go back. We can't go backwards from where we are now. The economy can't tolerate that. So if it continues as it is, absolutely, you know, the roles are going to come back, and we're seeing the roles that were coming back online. The groups, all the groups have restructured. We know that the big groups, they have a lot of regional roles that, you know, and probably some of you guys sitting on here may have, you know, suffered as a result of that. But all the restructures, you know, most of it's happened. Some big groups are still doing it, but that is also going to create more jobs because of the restructuring of that. So, you know, some of the groups that we used to work with, that, you know, all the jobs went offline, they're coming back. They're definitely coming back. Don't just look on the caterer if you're looking for work. You know, there's a lot of people aren't using the caterer at the moment because of the costs involved. So if you are
or the job boards, Aid,
you're not to all job boards, not just the caterer, if that's your go-to.
I'm picking on the caterer. Yeah, it's a bit more positive in the market, isn't there? Absolutely. I think there's certain niches which are coming back quicker than others. Anything leisure-based, usually at the moment, kind of luxury end. I didn't realise that still a lot of the high-end luxury properties still aren't open yet, and they're slowly coming back online. So I think with that, once their teams come back up to speed, I think I spoke to a very nice hotel up in Lancashire. I think it was late last week, and I think they're up at 92% occupancy levels compared to year on year, usually trading around 75, 79%. So yeah, I think the staycation thing's going to continue on for the rest of the year now, because those who like a nice treat away, you know, for a gourmet weekend or a nice high-end stay, will be still wanting that. There's huge appetite because they've not been able to get a bedroom for the whole of August and September. So yeah, certain pockets. Obviously schools are back now, so we're seeing lots of roles within kind of education coming back round. They seem pretty solid, and anything which is leisure based, so any kind of hotel or restaurant which is kind of seaside or within a tourist city such as Cheltenham, Oxford, etc. Harrogate, I'll go up north, so I have to say north or south. I've seen some really good footfall at the moment. So, but unfortunately, it's still a bit slow going for city centres, which are less desirable. I'm sat in Birmingham today, which is still pretty quiet, but we're slowly getting there. London, I'm hearing it's slowly getting busier, but still nowhere near the levels. But you know, schools are back in, so I'm optimistic still. So, is there anything to add to that, Aid? Any other highlights of the job market?
Picked up a role in London yesterday, so
yeah, there we go. We're getting there.
We feel a lot more. We feel busy in the office, don't we?
We started smiling yet.
we feel like, you know, we're getting not stretched, but there's definitely a lot to get done, which is, you know, 2 months ago, not really.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're getting there. We are getting there. Lovely. So I think we've only actually got one question from the audience today, so I'll fire on with that to our guests. How do companies qualify what is a good fit for a psychometric test? Now, not quite sure if we kind of, yeah. So I suppose how we'll kind of rephrase this. So if you're a business, how would you? I'm going to use colours again, Hilary. You're going to hate me. But how would you kind of preempt? So it's usually when you're doing psychometrics, you've met as a team and kind of mapped out exactly the characteristics or the skill set you're looking for. How would you qualify that?
I think it depends on the criteria. There's such a range of psychometrics. So it's like asking for feedback. You need to kind of narrow down. So I think that if you're looking for a role for an accountant, for example, you may well do an agility and a you know, sort of test that tests your numerical ability. That would be really sensible to do, and that would come under the psychometric bound, you know, sort of banner, really. If it's for personality, to be honest, I really don't know. I don't know how. You know, I work with psychologists that are a lot cleverer than me, and I'm not sure that we could look at a profile and match it up on paper. And I think
it's not a blueprint.
It's a bit dangerous. So
yeah,
I wouldn't worry too much about it. And also I think, you know, some of the psychometrics that you can do show up things like stress. So Thomas International, for example, there's a part of that shows up stress, and that leads to questions in the interview. Now, if you're being asked those questions and being discounted for that reason, that is not a company that I would say you want to work for.
No.
So sometimes these things are in your interest to find out, and the psychometric can be really helpful to do that.
Well, moving jobs is one of the 3 most stressful things to do in life, isn't it? Getting married, moving house, changing, having kids, actually. I might add that in there as well. But yeah, so yeah, are you going to be stressed when you're doing these psychometrics? Absolutely. So yeah, maybe it does throw up the wrong results.
Yeah, they're using the psychometric as some sort of secret police way. They're not a company that you want to work for, so go somewhere else. You're worth more than that.
Yeah. We'll avoid right. Okay, I'm gonna, again, this is videoed, so I'll send it to some of my clients. No, absolutely, they're not the be all and end all, but unfortunately,
no. But I guess if you've got, you know, someone that's spent 5 years working in luxury hotels and they've applied for a job in a, you know, we're talking an entry level role, and then they're applying for a role at Byron Burger, you know, or a gastropub, Brexit. It's a different type of environment. So I guess that's where I think, because you're not saying that person wouldn't fit into that environment, but I guess doing those tests can probably whittle out, you know, because you'll have been trained a certain way working in a luxury, you know, Red Star property, and would you be able to transfer your skills into a more casual dining environment? I guess that's
the whole nub of psychometrics. It depends whether you're testing for personality or whether you're testing for behaviour.
Yeah.
So that I can't really answer your person's question, because it really depends on what they're testing for. So the ones that test for behaviour, the behaviour can be adapted. The ones that test for personality, there are some great ones and there are some really dodgy ones out there. So I think to base the decision on a personality test is a bit risky from an employer's point of view, but we're being recorded, so I'm not going to say anything.
I do have employers who do it and they don't believe in it and they say we have to do this, but
because it looks like part of the parcel.
Yeah, it's just a policy. Yeah, it's not that great. We've actually had another question come in. Thanks, Sarah. What would be your top question for a candidate to ask an interviewer?
Right, before I answer this, you have to bear in mind, Sarah, that I haven't had a proper job for 30 years. I would like to know once I'd done the homework on ownership and who was going to be paying me and what it's like, I would like to know what the learning culture is in this organisation. How easy will it be to learn, and how will my learning be supported? Seriously, I think that's a good question to ask. And the other one, which is a bit mischievous, would be about what was the last time someone made a mistake. And I'd love to know what the answer to that would be. Yeah, someone made a mistake and we fired them, or we chopped their head off, or we learned from it, or we, like, what's the answer to that one? But Sarah, you have to bear in mind that I haven't got what my mother calls a proper job.
I love that. I mean, yeah, the interview has probably tested you for the last 45 minutes, so it's probably good to turn the tables, and I like that. Good. Where are you, Susan?
For me, it'd be about culture and culture fit, and how, you know, having done your homework, this is what you're telling me the culture's like in your business. Well, what does that actually look like, and who leads the culture within across the business, and how does that actually translate into the team that I'm going to be working in? That's for me, really. You know, do you put your money where your mouth is? Am I actually going to see what you're talking about here? And is it what I want to do? Because I think there's been a shift more recently. For a time, it was most certainly the employee that was kind of holding a lot of the cards, and it was quite tricky for hospitality to be able to recruit and bring lots of people in, and it was definitely the employees market. There's definitely been that shift now, but that still doesn't mean to say that going for an interview doesn't mean to say that it's not a two-way street, and that you need to be interviewing the company as much as they're interviewing you. And, you know, if you're meeting your potential boss, think about, you know, are they being professional? Does their values match with the values that I'm looking for in the company and the person that I want to work for? So I think, you know, it's those kind of things. So it's what's important to you, what are your values, and is the company actually displaying those values?
Not just written on the website.
Precisely. Yeah.
Is it actually happening? Yeah. No, I like that. Brilliant.
So Mark, a current one might be tell me what happens during lockdown.
How a company responded. Yeah, we're hearing all sorts, the good, bad and ugly at the moment, of some businesses did better than others, should we say, and we're obviously seeing the results of that. You know, there's people in jobs who don't want to be there because the company hasn't acted in the right way or what they wanted. Yeah. Yes, it's definitely thrown up a few things. Really good point there. Lovely, thank you. Cool. Well, I'll just wrap things up. So big thank you for everyone who's joined us today. And get that slide up. There we go. I'm getting quicker at that. Yeah, so thank you for everyone who has joined us today. But even more thanks to our two guests, Hilary and Sue. You most definitely weren't fraudulent. I think you've added real value to our chat today, and hopefully those who have joined us will watch the video, see value. And I think there's some really good hints and tips there in terms of what to expect from those. Well, there's, as we've kind of alluded to, there's numerous ways of people kind of second and third interviewing, and every company and employer's got a different way of doing things. So yeah, big thanks for that. So next week we have a topic of, it sounds quite a short webinar, but we're going to talk how to accept a job, which sounds a bit mad, but how to handle that process. And this is probably aimed towards those who are applying for jobs directly rather than through a recruitment agency, because as a recruitment agency, we kind of manage that process. You might not be, you might have several jobs on offer, but they're not quite timed right, or the offer they've given you initially isn't right, but you don't know how to approach getting the best package for yourself. Not necessarily salary, but it might be hours, holiday, pension, healthcare. There's quite a lot when it comes to kind of job offers, and how to do that in the right way, rather than just sounding like you're kind of being greedy. Or it might be even speaking to the employer about what your progression looks like. An offer isn't necessarily to, just around salary. So we're going to just discuss how to accept a job. We've got two Two guests joining us, one from Central Island Hotels, another one from Bistro Pierre, two HR managers, HR directors. So it should be a good session. So I'm looking forward to that. So just a reminder, as always, we put the recording online in the next few hours. So again, if you missed any or you want to pass it on, feel free to share it. But yeah, big thanks again to Hilary, Susan. I hope you enjoyed the session. Hilary, you're well versed in these webinars now. So one down, a few more to go till we can do face-to-face meetings, etc. And how was it for you, Susan? Was it all okay?
Yeah, it was really great. Thank you very much for inviting me along. I really enjoyed it.
We wouldn't even know it's your first webinar.
Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for coming, guys. Really appreciate it, and I'll catch up with you soon. Take care. Cheers. Bye bye.